It's a number that's hard to comprehend. 600. That's how many people Henry Lee Lucas claimed to have murdered. He didn't just confess to one or two killings, he confessed to hundreds, spreading across America. Imagine a man sitting in a police station, calmly listing victims. He described crimes in states he barely knew, with details that seemed chillingly real. He became almost overnight the most prolific serial killer in history. The media called him a monster, a one-man crime wave. It was a story almost too big to be true, a tale of pure, unadulterated evil that captured the attention of an entire nation. It felt like something out of a horror film, not real life. His story began in a way that felt strangely simple. Lucas was a drifter, a man with a low IQ and a troubled past. He had already been in prison for killing his mother. When he was arrested again in 1983 for a weapons charge, he started talking. He confessed to killing his young companion, Becky Powell, and an elderly woman named Kate Rich, but he didn't stop there. He just kept talking. He claimed to be part of a satanic cult that demanded human sacrifices. He said he worked as a hitman for a shadowy organization. For every unsolved murder, it seemed Lucas had an answer. He was the key that unlocked everything. The sheer scale of his confessions was staggering. He painted a picture of a life spent on the road, driven by a relentless urge to kill. He would describe picking up strangers, hitchhikers, people who were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. In his telling, no one was safe. He claimed to have used every weapon imaginable, from knives to his bare hands. The stories were brutal, graphic, and filled with the kind of specific details that make your skin crawl. He wasn't just a killer, he was a phantom, moving from town to town, leaving a trail of death that no one had managed to connect until now. This narrative of a lone, unstoppable killer fed into a growing fear in America during the 1980s. People were worried about stranger danger, the idea that a faceless evil could be lurking anywhere. Lucas gave that fear a name and a face. He was the bogeyman made real. His confessions seemed to confirm everyone's worst nightmares. Here was a man who embodied pure chaos, a human black hole of violence. His stories were terrifying, but they were also compelling. They offered a simple, if horrifying, explanation for dozens of unsolved tragedies that had haunted families and communities for years. It was a neat, tidy answer to a lot of messy questions. So why did so many people believe him? It seems strange now, but at the time, there were compelling reasons. Law enforcement officers were under immense pressure to solve cases. These weren't just files in a cabinet, they were grieving families waiting for answers. When Lucas came along, he offered them closure on a silver platter. A special task force, the Lucas Task Force, was created in Texas just to handle his confessions. They would fly him around the country, from one crime scene to another. He seemed to be helping them. He was cooperative, he was talkative, and he knew things. The police believed him because he seemed to know details only the killer could know. They would show him a photograph of a victim, and he would describe how he had killed them. He would point out where a body was found on a map. It all felt very convincing. The officers weren't trying to be fooled. They were trying to do their jobs. Lucas was given special treatment. He got steak dinners, milkshakes, and cigarettes. He was no longer just a prisoner. He was a star witness, a consultant in his own reign of terror. This friendly relationship made it easier for the police to trust what he was saying. One of the most frightening things Lucas described was his supposed partnership with another killer, Otis Toole. Together they were a terrifying duo, a real-life version of a nightmare. Lucas claimed they traveled the country, killing for pleasure, for their cult, or for hire. He described abducting, torturing, and murdering people in gruesome detail. He talked about cannibalism and necrophilia. These confessions were so extreme, so beyond the pale of normal human behavior, that they seemed to have a strange ring of truth. Who could possibly make up something so awful? His willingness to admit to the most unspeakable acts made him seem more, not less, credible to some. The confessions solved cases. That was the bottom line. All across the country, police departments were closing the books on old, cold cases. A murder in Florida? Lucas did it. An unsolved killing in California? That was him too. For a brief time, it looked like one of the biggest crime waves in American history had finally been solved. The task force announced that Lucas was responsible for over 100 murders, and the number was still climbing. The system worked, it seemed. A monster had been caught, and thanks to his cooperation, justice was finally being served for dozens of forgotten victims. Or so it appeared. But then, journalists and investigators started asking questions. They looked closer at the timeline. They checked the facts, and things didn't add up. A reporter in Dallas found something strange. Lucas had confessed to a murder in Texas, but on the day of the crime, records showed he was working a job in Florida, hundreds of miles away. It was impossible. He couldn't be in two places at once. This was the first major crack in his story. It suggested that maybe, just maybe, Lucas wasn't telling the whole truth. The discovery was small, but its implications were huge. It opened the door to doubt. Once people started looking, they found more problems. Lots of them. For many of the crimes he confessed to, there was no physical evidence to connect him to the scene. No fingerprints, no DNA, nothing. His confessions were often vague. He would provide a detail, but it was often a detail that had been published in the newspaper. Some investigators began to suspect that the police were perhaps unintentionally feeding him information. They would show him a case file and he would simply repeat the details back to them as his own memory. He was like a sponge, soaking up information and presenting it as a confession. Even the details he knew were suspicious. He once correctly identified the brand of cigarette a victim smoked. It seemed like a stunning piece of inside knowledge. But it turned out that detail wasn't in the official police file. Where did he get it? It's possible an officer mentioned it to him during an informal chat. It became clear that Lucas was a master manipulator. He knew what the police wanted to hear. He craved the attention. Being the world's most infamous serial killer was better than being a nobody in a prison cell. He was performing, and the police were his captive audience. The final nail in the coffin for his grand story came from Lucas himself. In a television interview, he recanted everything. He said he was a liar. He claimed he only ever killed one person for sure: his mother. The rest, he said, was a hoax designed to expose the incompetence of the police. He wanted to show how easy it was to fool them. Suddenly, the monster was gone, replaced by a pathetic, attention-seeking con man. The hundreds of closed cases had to be reopened. The families who thought they had closure were thrown back into uncertainty. The truth was now hopelessly tangled with lies. So what was the truth? It's a question that, even today, is difficult to answer. It's now widely accepted that Henry Lee Lucas was not the prolific killer he claimed to be. The official number of murders confirmed to be his is closer to 3, not 600. He was a killer, yes, but he was also a pathological liar. He created a myth, a terrifying fiction that a lot of people wanted to believe. He saw a system that was hungry for answers, and he fed it exactly what it wanted. He became a legend, but a legend built on a foundation of deceit. Why would someone do this? For Lucas, it was about power and attention. In his normal life, he was a nobody. He was poor, uneducated, and powerless. But as the world's greatest serial killer, he was somebody. He was important. Police officers hung on his every word. He was on the news. He controlled the narrative. It was a twisted form of celebrity, but it was the only fame he could ever achieve. He was playing a game, and for a while, he was winning. His story is a chilling reminder that sometimes the desire for attention can be as powerful and destructive as any other motive. The case of Henry Lee Lucas teaches us a valuable lesson about truth and belief. It shows how easily people, even experts, can be fooled when a story is compelling enough. The police wanted to close cases, the media wanted a sensational story. The public wanted a simple explanation for complex fears. Lucas provided all of that. His case forces us to be more critical, to question official narratives, and to remember that the simplest answer isn't always the right one. It highlights the danger of confirmation bias, the tendency to believe information that confirms what we already suspect. In the end, Henry Lee Lucas is not remembered as the monster who killed 600 people. He is remembered as the man who tricked America. His legacy is one of confusion, of questions that may never be answered. For the families of the victims whose cases were falsely solved, the damage was immense. Their hope for justice was manipulated for the sake of a good story. The tale of Henry Lee Lucas is a dark, strange chapter in the history of crime. It's a cautionary tale about a man who became a legend, not because of what he did,